Welcome to the Oregon City Business Alliance Luncheon for January. I'm Dan Fowler. I'm one of the owners of the Abernathy Center, and we appreciate everyone being here today. Kent is on vacation, I think. Kent's on vacation, so he asked me to fill in for him today. So it gives me pleasure to introduce Tony Conkle this morning. I've known Tony a number of years, but he's been officially our city manager for 2 years, a little over 2 years. And Tony's worked for the city about 16 years. And most of you know him. He has his master's degree in urban planning from Portland State University, my alma mater. Good job. And he's married with 2 children, ages 7 and 11. Now, what you don't know about Tony, let me tell you a little bit about what you don't know about Tony. I know something that Tony doesn't know that I know. I heard that Tony was actually, at one time, maybe still, a pretty good gymnast, maybe even a master gymnast. And I thought I'd ask him to perform for us a feat that I understood that he did to the city staff at a core retreat one time about walking on hands for a while or something. But I was just kidding. I would like to ask you to do that, but you don't have to do that.
I might not get back up.
Anyway, just having some fun with you. Here's Tony Conkle.
Well, if I get really desperate, maybe I'll break it out later. So thank you for that introduction, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to be able to come speak to you today. It's always a pleasure working with the Oregon City Business Alliance and having this opportunity every year. Come talk about what we've accomplished, where we're heading, some of the thoughts that I have about our organization, some of the improvements that we've been making. And really, at the end of the day, it's about, trying to be transparent, trying to communicate effectively. It's a two-way street. So when I was kind of asked to talk about capitalizing on economic opportunities, when I think about that, for me, it's not just economic development. It's, we're creating a community here, 35,000 people, a regional center, county seat, great institutions here. All those, in my mind, go into creating economic opportunity, whether that's through our permitting process, our building program, the police force, the parks, the library, the pool. So when I look at this, hopefully you find this interesting as well, is, I kind of try to address this in looking at what we've accomplished in those departments and where we're heading in those departments. So let me go ahead and get started with some of the awards that we received during 2016. For the 6th year in a row, we received National Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting and maintained our AAA bond rating. We just got back our yearly audit that we do by an independent agency that comes in and looks at how we do our reporting, our transactions, how we account for the revenues, the expenditures. And that came back in all material respects unmodified, or a clean opinion. So thank you much for that. The library won Restore Oregon's DeMuro Award for Excellence in Preservation, Reuse, and Community Revitalization. Director Cole and her department has just done an amazing job, not only with that building, but with the programs that we provide to the community, ranging from infants through seniors. So really, you just see the excitement and the use of that facility, and I think it'll be a great amenity for this community for decades and decades to come. The Oregon chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects awarded the Willamette Falls Riverwalk Concept Design an Honor Award in Analysis and Planning category. The Oregon City 99E Bluff Water Replacement Project received the Project of the Year Award from the Oregon chapter of the American Public Works Association. So many of you remember was it 2 winters ago, the old pipeline coming over the bluff there sprung a leak, had to shut down 99E for a little bit. We're pretty good at putting pipes in the ground, but hanging one off an 85-foot cliff is not something you do every day. So great job by John Lewis and his team there. The City of Oregon City Also received Outstanding Performance Designation from the Oregon State Health Authority for their drinking water program. You've heard me talk before about our pavement maintenance utility fee. I know, the discussion about fees versus taxes has always been something that's a debate we'll continue to have in the community, but hopefully through the 5-year program that we put together and looking ahead, identifying projects, really coordinating how we do infrastructure with those projects, leveraging those funds to make improvements that are needed throughout our community, we are seeing improvements. Our pavement index continues to rise year after year. And this year, Matt Paulson, our Street Division Operations Supervisor, was named the Pavement Manager of the Year by the Northwest Pavement Managers Association. So just a great job by Matt and his team in doing a lot of work in the community as it relates to protecting our infrastructure. The more we can protect our streets now, do that preservation work, the longer they'll last and the less expensive they'll be to replace. So great work there. And I'd also like to introduce Kristen Brown, right here in the front, our new community communications coordinator. So very excited to have her on board. One of the goals of the commission that they adopted for 2017 through 19 was how do we improve communication with community members, business owners, property owners. And it's not only how do we get our information out to them, but how do we get that information back in a way that we can be responsive to that. So really look forward to that. Kristen joined us from Texas, started beginning of this month. So really just starting to get her feet under her as to what Oregon City is all about, how we communicate, how we can communicate better. So really look forward to that moving forward here. I'm going to roll into a little bit here. We're into the 7th months of our 2-year biennium budget that was adopted by the commission and went into effect July 1st of 2017. The main operating revenue for the general fund are primarily property taxes. That's about $25 million. Franchise fees are about $7 million. And then the remaining $12 million is made up of intergovernmental revenue, charges for services like parks and parking, the court facility, lodging taxes, interest income. And so that's really essentially non-dedicated funds that we have to work with to operate the city. And on the expense side, the largest expense is for police. It's about $21 million over that biennium. Then general government, my office, city commissioner, human resources, IT, finance, that's about $11 million. Community services, so parks is about $9 million. And through that budget process, we also identified $2.2 million for one-time expenses, such as the parks maintenance facility that needed to be upgraded, the move of the community development department into the new facility, and as well as much needed software and permitting system update for the whole city. We're running on a system that's nearly 20 years old, so that was a needed investment that we had to make. At the end, our ending fund balance is about $2.7 million, which we expect will likely increase when we do the actual budget audit once the biennium is over. Historically, what we've seen is the ability to return some funds back to the general fund that had been appropriated in the original budget. So that 2.7 represents about 12% of our general operating budget. Our goal is to get to 15 to 20% as recommended by the Government Finances Officers Association. So the commissioners have identified an ambitious set of goals and priorities for the 2017 through 19 biennium, while also adopting a budget that maintains the existing tax rate of $4.41 per thousand and no new fees. One of a limited number of, Oregon City is one of a limited number of jurisdictions in the state that actually is not charging their maximum rate, which would be $5.06. That 65-cent difference saved a single-family homeowner in Oregon City more than $160 annually based on about a $250,000 home. So I really do commend the commission for trying to work within their means that they have available to us. When we put that budget together, I asked all the directors to essentially hold the previous budget's operating and materials costs, didn't increase those for inflation, really trying to make sure that we're getting everything we can out of the budgets that we have and putting together responsible budgets with the public tax dollars that we're entrusted to invest in our community. I'll move on to community development, so planning and building. So the building department issued just under 2,200 building permits and evaluation of more than $120 million during 2017. While the permit numbers are similar to 2016, the value increased about $40 million. The main driver of this was in 2016, We had 2 commercial institutional type buildings. During 2017, we saw 13 of those. So that addresses and accounts for that bigger change in valuation that we're seeing with development coming in. We did implement a cannabis code in the city. So while we receive, a lot of concerns about whether marijuana, recreational marijuana should be legal or not in the state of Oregon or Oregon City, on the implementation side, it actually went very smoothly. Our police department has visited several of the retailers in town here, creating those relationships, seeing how the facilities are run. Through the permitting process, it actually went very smooth and very similar to any other commercial or retail establishment that was tried to start in Oregon City. Obviously, as we continue to see pressure, not only in Oregon City, but in the metro region in the state of Oregon for housing, housing prices continue to rise, rents continue to rise. We were able to receive a $100,000 equitable housing grant from Metro to really try to identify what those opportunities are to reduce barriers and provide incentives for housing opportunities. I think one of the greatest things about Oregon City is historically, whether it was renting or buying a home, you were able to find a price point that worked for you, whether it was a starter home, expanding as your family grew, or downsizing. That's becoming more and more difficult, and there are certain price points that are starting to disappear in the region. And so really our goal here with the grant is to really try to identify, are there barriers in the municipal code that we can try to address that would incentivize or allow different price points that are missing to be able to be constructed in the community here. So look forward to moving forward with that process and seeing what those results are. Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan has finally been adopted. I'm not sure how many times I've repeated that statement of we're almost there, but I started on this in 2002 with the initial urban growth boundary expansion, and I know work was done before that. So at this point, the plan's been adopted. All the appeals have been addressed, and it is in place. So that's been a great accomplishment. I'll talk a little bit more later in the presentation about what the next steps are to implement that concept plan. In the planning department in 2017, we saw the highest number of pre-applications that we've seen since we started keeping track in 1998 at 79. We issued 337 permits for new dwelling units that comprised of 220 multifamily units and 115 single-family residential units. We are also, as the economy has picked up, we've actually had a hard time getting qualified inspectors and plans examiners here in the city. We've done several interview processes and have been unsuccessful trying to find the people that we want to work with in this community. So the building department started a building inspector trainee position. So essentially we'll bring folks in, we'll train them, and if it works out, we'll have been able to get the person that we want in those positions to help us with the development applications that we see coming in. We've continued our development stakeholders group, which consists of members of the development community, the citizen involvement committee, and the general public. This has really been a great resource for us in terms of being able to discuss issues that they may be having with part of the development process, or as new standards come online, like we had to implement our new stormwater design standards, being able to reach out to those communities and have those discussions before they're actually put in place alleviates some of the surprise factor, as well as being able to have conversations about how is this actually going to work. And we've actually used members off that stakeholder group to help with some of the interview and hiring process for employees here in the city. So it's been a great conduit for sharing of information. And last but not least, for community development, we've been up at 221 Molalla for almost a decade now. When we bought the Mount Pleasant property, not only did you have the original school, but you had what we call the annex next door to that. The commission gave us the direction to utilize that facility to move planning and building into. So we're currently doing the tenant improvements in that facility and hope to be moved in by April or May of this year. When we talk about economic development, I've touched on before the enterprise zones that we've created, which allow businesses to invest capital for expansion and job creation and receive a state tax deferment. So in 2016, we had 2 companies locally take advantage of that, and this year we were able to work with Optimized Technologies, a longtime business owner in the community, over 23 years. And they invested over $1 million in new capital and building expansion, creating 4 new living wage jobs in the community here. So it's really great to be able to work with a local business. Once again, anything we can do to keep local businesses here and give them the opportunity to expand and grow is a great way to drive living wage jobs, increase assessed value, and those opportunities. And for Optimize Technologies, those 4 jobs is actually a 20% increase in their work staff. So really great to be able to identify those businesses and capitalize on those opportunities that are available to them. We've been working on the tourism strategy development, so really thinking about how can we use tourism to drive economic development in Oregon City? How can we bring folks in from outside the community to come here, spend their dollars, stay in the hotel? So we put together a really diverse group of stakeholders who are in all facets of tourism, whether it's historic, along the river, and created a strategy for how can we move forward in Oregon City. And out of that, we are currently out looking for a marketing firm to help us with the experience-based marketing. So essentially starting that process of selling Oregon City, why you want to come here, why you want to come visit our businesses, see our downtown, everything else that we have to offer in the community. So we started that process, and you'll be seeing that roll out over the next year. The Economic Improvement District, so for the Downtown Oregon City Association, for those of you who don't know, every 4 years they need to renew their funding for that Economic Improvement District. Just want to congratulate Downtown Oregon City, Jonathan. I think they've done a great job with helping transform downtown. There's been a lot of investment working with property owners, business owners, tree lights, clean team, all those things going into really transforming what our downtown was 10, 12, 15 years ago. And I would also like to congratulate the business owners, the property owners, Downtown Oregon City Association that has become a finalist as a Great American Main Street from the National Main Street Association. That's a great honor. Couldn't be more proud of what they've been doing down there. The Main Street Conference is, I believe, the last week of March, and so hopefully we'll hear some great news when you come back from that, so best of luck on that. The 10th and Main Street property, that's a city-owned property that we've been working on. It's under contract right now for a mixed-use development that'll include retail on the first floor. The original proposal is 3 stories of residential, probably somewhere 30, 33 units associated with that. It'd be very exciting to get some residential development and mixed-use development, new development, really in our downtown core. We're currently been working with, it's under contract with Willamette Stone. They met with our Urban Renewal Commission during a design charrette and currently working on designs for that facility. So hopefully we'll see something move forward that in the near future. The Economic Development Department also joined Team Oregon. It's a recruitment of various types of manufacturing companies to Oregon through lead generation, trade show participation, and visits to companies and site selectors. We're also working with the consulting firm Research Consultants International, a lead generation firm to coordinate contacts with appropriate companies. So really trying to reach out for the employment and industrial lands that we have available along Glen Oak Road, Myers Road, along Beaver Creek, to find and really target those industries that we think would fit in there. And that dovetails right into the coordination that we've had with Clackamas Community College and the Chamber of Commerce for the Beaver Creek employment area, putting education to work marketing campaign. So really trying to find what are those connections that we can have with the job training that we're doing at the high school through CASE or at the community college with their new ITC building, and really trying to find those companies that would see a benefit. If you can move in here, you have immediate job training from the graduates of those facilities, or you have internship opportunities. So really using that as another tool, another marketing reason for why you want to move to Oregon City on these industrial lands. We've also been working with property owners out there on individual site assessments. So really trying to understand what properties are available on a site-by-site, property-by-property basis so that we can use that to market to certain developers, whether they need 10 acres, 50 acres, 70 acres. How can we put that together for them and make it as easy as possible for them to come invest in our community in those industrial areas? We also completed cooperation with planning and economic development was a parking study. It initially started as looking at how are we going to address access parking for the Blue Heron property. We expanded that to include all of downtown. And out of that process became short-term, medium-term, long-term projects that we can work on and focus to try to alleviate some of the parking constraints that we see downtown. Historically, our busiest downtown parking was during the day. Obviously, we were 9 to 5. As soon as the courthouse shut down, we started to thin out downtown. We've actually started to see that flip, where we've got such great excitement around restaurants and new amenities downtown that we're actually seeing a higher parking demand at night. It's a great problem to have. We just need to figure out how to solve it. So an example of a short-term fix that we can provide in downtown is branding. You go to McMinnville's downtown. You go to downtown Portland, you see Smart Park. I'm pretty sure everybody here knows exactly what it means when you see Smart Park. It's a place to go publicly park. So what can we do to brand our parking and then potentially reach out to the private property owners who have off-street lots and see which ones are willing to work with the city on that branding program to allow some additional parking at night. So these are small steps that we can take to try to alleviate some of the parking concerns that we are seeing downtown. And finally, urban renewal. So I'll go through the history real quick. Ballot measure goes to the voters. Voters put a limitation on what we are able to spend urban renewal funds on, essentially allowing us to pay down the existing debt. We took that and challenged the ability to put that measure on the ballot. Clackamas County Circuit Court determined that the ballot measure was invalid. We're currently waiting for the final order from Clackamas County. Once that final order comes, we'll have a better idea whether this is going to be appealed to the Court of Appeals or not. So while urban renewal is technically up and functioning, we're going to wait and see what happens with any additional appeals that may come forward before we make any decisions on how urban renewal, what it becomes, what projects we're going to be working on, what public engagement we need to do if that's a direction that the Urban Renewal Commission decides to go. Next, finally, pretty excited to see Cove Phase 1 coming out of the ground. It's been wonderful to see that development happening. Main Street extensions in place, roundabout, bike lanes, sidewalks, street lighting, landscaping, and if you've been out there lately, several of the units are coming out of the ground. We're looking at 244 apartment units on Cove Phase 1, some office space, and then a private recreational facility for for the residents of that development. For Phase 2, we were actually approached by Deacon Construction and Hudson Holding. They came and presented to the Urban Renewal Commission last year, at the end of last year, with a pretty ambitious proposal for nearly 400 housing units, retail, restaurants on Cove Phase 2, which is on the other side of the road from Main Street Extension. The Urban Renewal Commission had some conversations with them and then directed staff to start negotiating a development and disposition agreement with the developers. So we put together an internal team of planning, engineering, economic development to meet with their development team, really trying to hammer out what's in that development agreement, what's the staging, what's the phasing of the project, what are the financial commitments that are necessary. So we'll hopefully continue to negotiate that contract, that agreement with them, and bring something forward for the Urban Renewal Commission to consider in the next couple of months. During that process, many of you may recall, we also had a couple of blue-green algae blooms in Clackamas Cove over the last 2 years. So as the waters go down in July, August, and the temperatures were really heating up over the last 2 years, we had those algae blooms happen. So we went ahead and did a water quality and environmental feasibility study. What can we do to protect that asset? You know, having that waterfront access, not only for the public to use, but also for the housing around it's important. And out of that study, one of the remedies we identified was creating additional shoreline habitat and wetlands in the cove, not only for water quality, but for fish mitigation. And then building on that was the ability to potentially use those wetland areas as wetland mitigation credits against other developments throughout the region that may need to buy those. So essentially trying to identify how can we not only improve the water quality, the fish habitat, get some educational opportunity through wetland mitigation, but then also potentially have a funding source on the back end to help pay for that mitigation on top of it. So that is something we're currently investigating with Deacon Construction as an option to address some of the water quality issues that we see in the cove. Next, Public Works, once again, had a great summer, did a lot of work out there. Some of the more visible ones, the extension of the Beaver Creek Road dual left turn lanes from Beaver Creek eastbound to 213 northbound, building additional capacity and alleviating some of the queuing distance issues that we had. The 99E Bluff water line, talked a little bit about that. 15th Street and South End water line and replacement projects. And I talked a little bit earlier about some of the pavement maintenance utility funds and some of the projects that we've been doing. It's not only slurry seals, but they put down over 1,600 tons of pavement this summer, which is 50% more than they did the year before. So really trying to get ahead, get in the ground, get some of these roads protected for the long term. We also have finished 6 of the 7 sewer moratoriums. So we got Lynn Avenue done last year. Over last winter, we had a landslide down in Newell Creek Canyon, down Peterskeen Way, took out one of our sanitary sewer lines. This is an interesting project, much like the Bluff water line, where it wasn't typical in the ground, but hanging off a cliff. This was a rather old sewer line that had been taken out, and it was in a very steep slope area with a lot of vegetation that had grown up around it. So instead of coming in and trenching like we usually would do, they actually went in and bored a new line, which was pretty cool to see. Got a guy walking along above, controlling the height and the slope of the bore, and then pulling the new line through behind it. It was pretty extensive, but Public Works did a great job getting in there. Instead of just ripping up everything and tearing out all the trees, actually went underground and got that project done and completed. So good job by them. We're also under construction right now, Beaver Creek Road sewer line extension down to Loader Road, trying to get some needed infrastructure to the employment lands down in that area. Holcomb Boulevard, we had a slide that happened as you're going up into Park Place there, so we're continuing to monitor and make some improvements there. And then also working on a new intersection, a street light at Washington and 12th. A lot of pedestrian crossings in that area, and we had a couple accidents there over the last 2 years that were really drove the warrants for a new light there. So we'll be beginning to get that light in place here in the near future. Under the design phase in Public Works is one of the major ones is Myers Road Extension from High School Lane by the new Oregon City Transportation Facility over to 213. So we continue to work on the design and engineering of that project in coordination with Clackamas Community College. We're working on Hazelwood Drive, which is the last of the 7 sewer moratorium areas. Hope to get that addressed over this next year. Putting together our water line replacement projects for 2018, and then Molalla Avenue. So many of you may recall that we were awarded about $3.8 million in regional flexible transportation funds, which we matched with $4 million of local funds to make street improvements to Molalla Avenue between Beaver Creek Road and Highway 213. So new street, bike lanes, lighting, sidewalks, pedestrian crossings. One of the issues we run into there is that the actual allocation of the money isn't until 2019. So we're trying to negotiate to get a lot of the design work, if we can, done ahead of time. So once those funds are appropriated, we can roll right into construction and get that section completed. Under the study phase, one of the big issues that we deal with is sewer inflow and infiltration, what we call I&I. So you'll see us out there quite a bit, smoke testing, so essentially putting smoke in there, seeing where it's coming out. But we've also done over 20 miles of sewer line TV inspection and 28 miles of cleaning. One of the issues we run into is it's not that we're running out of capacity because there's more sewage. On days like this and over the winter months, because of the age of our infrastructure, those sewer lines start to crack, separate, we have cross connections, they fill with water. So essentially we're losing capacity in our sewer system, causing backups or downstream downsizing requirements because it's being used up by rainwater. So everything we can do to invest and identify how to alleviate, remove where that I&I is happening saves money through downstream pipe increases or additional capacity needed at the treatment facility. So it really is a really important program that we've been working on. It's not flashy and fun, but you know, the infrastructure that we have was a significant investment when we made it decades and decades ago, and the replacement of it will be even more as we move forward, and it's starting to come due. We're also been working on a stormwater master plan update, transportation system development charges, and then also working with Clackamas River Water in a joint engineering study to figure out if there's what's the best way to serve the eastern portion of Oregon City urban growth boundary, urban reserves, as well as unincorporated Clackamas County. So are there opportunities for working together on that? Who's going to serve where? So those studies continue on working with CRW. They've been great to work with moving forward, and we'll see what comes out of that. So this one might replace the Beaver Creek Concept Plan, the Public Works Operation Facility. We continue to desperately need improvements to that facility. If anybody'd like a tour and see what the existing conditions are, please contact John Lewis. I'm sure he'd be happy to walk you through the facility. We currently have 2 outstanding litigation issues that we're dealing with, one concerning some older buildings that were relocated from Camp Adair Military Base to the property, as well as if the upper public works yard is a park or not. So both of those are currently in litigation, which we hope to come to a conclusion to over the next year. In the meantime, we continue to work on design work, meeting with the neighbors to address their concerns. I think we've made significant changes to the layout of the site, how it will be operated to address a lot of the concerns that we've heard. So we'll continue to move forward with that project over the next couple of months. I love this one from Community Services. Parks receives all kinds of use, compliments on the services that we provide and how we serve them. We've got 37 parks with over 300 acres in our community here. It's wonderful. It also means that we have a lot of work in keeping up with that. But some of the highlights of what we've provided to the community that many of you in this community or in this room may not utilize or know that exist. The Pioneer Community Center provided nearly 8,000 meals through Congregate Meal Program and nearly 29,000 meals through Meals on Wheels. It's a wonderful program for some folks. It might be the only meal they receive or the only visit they have for that day. So a very important program that we see that we provide for our community. We work collaboratively with service groups and individuals in our community to provide enhanced services via volunteerism, helping with parks cleanups or volunteering at some of our facilities. 16,500 volunteer hours last year, almost $400,000 in kind. So just wonderful relationships between the Parks Department and our community, providing those much needed volunteer hours and services that we wouldn't be able to provide with just staffing alone. The pool had over 143,000 visitors, 2,600 visitors to the movies in the park, 21,000 visitors to concerts in the park, all those exceeding what we saw in 2016. The Community Development Department and Parks also worked on how do we provide a connection from the end of the McLaughlin Promenade to the Kenema Children's Park and then down into the Kenema Bluffs, about 320 acres owned by Metro. So they had a greenway for the day, invited folks to come out and kind of walk between those two areas. How would we get from point A to point B? So it was really a great project, a lot of stakeholder involvement in trying to identify a preferred route to get that connection made, connecting those two important resources in the community. The Parks Department was successful in receiving a nearly $500,000 state parks grant, being matched by about $2 million from system development charges for the construction of a new park down on Glen Oak Road. So that project is moving forward and is funded and will hopefully be completed in 2019. Desperately needed down in that area of the community. And then we've also just received approval from the City Commission to move forward with a parks maintenance facility. So the parks maintenance facility, I think, was the original barn from the home. We red tagged it about 4 years ago. The staff have been working out of a trailer up in the cemetery. So we've finally been able to identify a combination of general fund and system development charges to get that moving forward in a new facility for them. So very excited to be able to provide that new amenity for the community as well as our staff members that have been working there. On a public safety side, one of the things I'm really excited about is I've talked about this before, the importance of our new homeless liaison officer, Officer Day. I can't say enough about, one, I truly believe homelessness is an issue that's here. It's going to be here for a while. We can either put our head in the sand or we can try to find innovative ways to address that. And that means part of that for us is having a homeless liaison officer who essentially is the central point of contact for our homeless community, impacted businesses, impacted neighbors, whether that be positively or negatively. Working with Health and Human Services through Clackamas County, with Providence Willamette Falls. I can't thank the partners enough for stepping forward to try to come up with ideas on how we can address what we're seeing in our community. Homelessness isn't socioeconomic. You could be one paycheck away. Your rent could go up. It could be domestic violence. It could be substance abuse. It could be mental illness. It could be a combination of all of those. So we haven't identified one trick, one investment that will cure all of that. So right now, a lot of the investment is working with, and I appreciate Commissioner Ide's efforts, Commissioner Shaw, working with Providence Willamette Falls, the county, nonprofits, religious organizations, and really coming together to try to find solutions to homelessness. It's a tough conversation sometimes, but it's one that's well needed. But in the interim, what we can do is continue to provide what we can locally, and one of those is through the Homeless Liaison Officer. Officer Day, I just have to commend him on his empathy, his patience, his tenacity. Every one of these is different, whether it's getting an individual into a short-term housing, a substance abuse program, an ID card so they can collect Social Security. Every one of these has been small victories, but they're starting, and they're going to continue to build. So just really proud of that program. Many of you may recall we had a pretty rough winter last year, and the commission was called into emergency session multiple times to open emergency warming shelters. So this year we got a little bit ahead of it. We created a policy, community development, building department with fire and PD, created a policy which essentially outlined the minimum standards to operate a warming shelter, as well as what the occupancy would be. And then we've already approved 2 this year, instead of going event by event, we've essentially opened them and allowed them to open through March 15th of this year. So hopefully we'll be a little better position this year to address our homeless community when those cold weather events do occur over the next couple of months. Big thanks to Oregon City School District. They provided 50% funding match to bring on a second school resource officer. Chief Band then reached out to Clackamas Community College. They actually funded a full police officer to coordinate campus safety issues on the campus. So that's a great addition to the Clackamas Community College for campus safety issues. As you can see up here, we continue to receive significant calls. 40,000 calls for service, responded to 816 traffic crashes. Wrote about 9,900 citations, of which 4,700 were moving violations, made about 1,500 arrests, and code enforcement cleaned up 79 homeless camps in the community. We currently have our full 3-person traffic team up in place, and it's been great from an educational standpoint, and then also being able to provide targeted response, whether it's at intersections that have high crash rates or when the neighborhood concerns that we have about speeding in those neighborhoods. So really trying to be responsive and proactive and trying to make the community a little bit safer from a vehicular speeding and crash standpoint. This is another one. I really do commend Chief Band for taking this issue head on. We've staffed and trained the first ever City Police peer support team, whose role it is to prove wellness by helping officers deal with stressors on the job. You know, it's so important, training, physical fitness, but also being mentally healthy. And sometimes that's a tough conversation to have, especially in the police and law enforcement side. So I commend him for having that in place now while everything's relatively calm, so that we are ready if something should happen in the future and have those resources and that peer support in place to address any issues that may come up. Big thank you to the voters of Oregon City. We were able to get bonding authority. It passed with 81% approval rating. We're moving forward on the new police and court facility. We're going out to bond sale this spring. We'll then enter into about a 12 to 15-month design, engineering, planning endeavor. And then our target is to begin construction in July of 2019 when our lease with Merrillhurst comes up. So looking forward to getting that facility out of the ground. So I talked a little bit earlier about some of the development, industrial, commercial development that we saw. So I just want to run through a couple of longtime institutional users who have been here, who've invested again in Oregon City. So big thanks to Providence Willamette Falls Hospital. They had a need for additional medical office space, new doctors, additional physician space to serve not only our community but the greater Oregon City area. They come up with a great design building, 15th in Division. So if you have a chance to go up, it's coming out of the ground pretty quick. So really excited for that new amenity to come online and really appreciate their willingness to invest again in Oregon City with their expansion. Clackamas Community College, their Industrial Technical Center is coming out of the ground as well. So pretty excited to see not only the Technical Center coming online, which will provide new opportunities for degrees in an ever-changing employment world, but cooperating with us to really use that as a marketing tool for why businesses would want to invest here in Oregon City. So really reaching out and creating those connections with us, the chamber, the surrounding properties. But as part of their bond project, we'll also see additional public transportation improvements, redesign of the TriMet transfer station that's up there, a new connection from Douglas Loop to the new Myers Road connection. So just really appreciate the ability to work with Clackamas Community College. They've been great on a lot of this infrastructure work that we're endeavoring on, and look forward to these additional resources that they bring to our residents of Oregon City. So as part of the county's Red Soils Master Plan, it's been a long-term plan to move the courthouse up there. The state has realized that the facilities at their courts aren't sufficient to accommodate the growing population in Oregon. So the county has been working with the legislature to identify funding. The state's identified or willing to bring half of the construction cost for a new courthouse. So the current courthouse is estimated about $154 million, but I really do appreciate the county's efforts on two fronts. One is they've reached out early to the city. Some of my staff are on their planning group for the new courthouse up at Red Soils, which will drive additional private economic development as those resources move up on top of the hill to be closer to the new courthouse. But then they've also reached out on what do we do with the courthouse. They've started those conversations. It has been an anchor of our downtown for decades. And so, if all this goes well, they open the doors at the new courthouse and we seamlessly transition into a new use at the courthouse. So they've reached out and are willing to start having those conversations now with Downtown Oregon City, the Chamber, Oregon City Business Alliance, any other stakeholder that wants to be involved. What does the courthouse become, and what does that look like? So I really do appreciate the early reach out to us and look forward to working with you to figure that out. I think it's a great asset downtown, and look forward to how that transition works. The Beaver Creek employment area. I already talked a little bit about the sewer extension, the business recruitment that's ongoing. We received a $100,000 transportation and growth management grant to write the zoning code. So essentially now we're working on what is the zoning code going to be that implements the concept plan. So we have, we're finalizing the scope of the work. We'll hire a consultant, hopefully complete that within the next 12 months. We're also working on alternative mobility standards. So what that means is along the Highway 213 corridor, we identified two intersections, Redland Road and Beaver Creek Road, that don't meet Oregon Department of Transportation intersection standards. The fix, especially at Beaver Creek, was extremely expensive, and it's very difficult because of constrained topography in there to essentially put in a diamond change interchange. So through the alternative mobility standards, we've been working with the stakeholder groups as well as the agencies to identify what are reasonable and affordable improvements that we can make to improve the efficiency of that intersection, but then also focus on safety at that intersection. This has one of the highest crash rates in the state of Oregon. And so anything we can do to make that intersection safer. So an example of an improvement would be a free right turn lane from Beaver Creek Road westbound to 213 northbound, alleviating the queuing distance that we see in the morning. So that's affordable, it's doable, it'll improve the intersection. It won't make it perfect, but it's these incremental improvements that we can make here. 50% of the trips on Beaver Creek Road on 213 don't start or stop in Oregon City. Yet it's falling on Oregon City to address this and trying to agree to take on the responsibility for an ODOT facility with Clackamas County, Beaver Creek Road coming into it is not something Oregon City can do. And so it's really trying to find these alternatives that provide incremental improvements, maintain the capacity as best as we can of that interchange, but then make it as safe as we can as well is something that we've been working on. Planning Commission is currently holding public hearings on the alternative mobility standards. Their recommendation will go to the City Commission for their consideration. Should the Commission approve that, it'll then go to the Oregon Transportation Commission for final approval. If it is approved, this will get funded. About 50% of the projects are SDC eligible, System Development Charge eligible. The remainder would come through grants, transportation funding, and private development to get those improvements in place at that intersection. And the last but not least, Willamette Falls Legacy Project. We continue to work on the Riverwalk. We had a great design charrette with Snowhetta on coming up with the Riverwalk concept design and the Phase 1 construction. We had over 600 people come to the final design presentation at the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. We're also bringing this forward for the Commission to consider to adopt by resolution in February. We have also included what we call a cultural landscape report. So essentially looking at, there's a long history on that site. And so really trying to document through the decades of what was going on there. And then from that, pulling out, there are certain decades that we could certainly focus in on as part of the cultural and historical interpretation of storytelling on the site, the design of the site. So that'll be included as part of the Riverwalk master plan. And then we've also been working on a brownfield environmental site assessment. So we've partnered with Clackamas County and Metro to look at brownfield sites along 99E, and it came with grant funding with that. So we identified the Blue Heron site. So essentially, how do you deal with asbestos, underground storage tanks, anything else that we find during that initial environmental review? Trying to tee it up for moving right into a cleanup and mediation stage on the property. Obviously, continue to work with the property owner, trying to understand the concerns to get phase 1 implemented. We are funded at around $21 million to move that project forward. So we will continue to negotiate with Mr. Heideggerken to figure out and address what his concerns may be if we can, in coordination with our partners group and any decisions that they make about how to move that project forward. So with that, I will stop. I could certainly talk on about a lot of the things that we've been able to accomplish in the community as well as where we're going. Once again, circling back to, it is, a lot of this is about communication, getting in the room. We have big issues we have to deal with, whether that's homelessness, transportation, additional capacity on Abernethy Bridge. It's a huge project. What we do with Tri-City in terms of governance, capacity issues. How do we cooperate? How do we cooperate on those issues? How do we move them forward? And let's start moving on. So I really do appreciate this opportunity to speak with the Oregon City Business Alliance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
So we thank you all for coming today. Thank you, Tony, for the great presentation and update on what's going on in the city, and for all of you that attended. Next month, we will be meeting back in the ballroom. We're doing a little painting and remodeling in the ballroom. It's been 17 years, so we thought it was about time to put a new coat of paint on it. We paint it all the time, but we're changing the colors. So we'll be back down in the ballroom. And the topic is going to be a little bit of a mystery. We're still waiting on confirmation of a major sponsor, and we'll be sending that out by email just in a few days, we hope. So, yeah, William? I thought we were going to make it through the day. Oh, no, just kidding. We're pretty good friends. I could tease you.
Thank you. I think a lot of you, and there's several new people that have never come here before, so I just want to point out that this educational forum, which we provide every month on the 4th Tuesdays except December, is one and probably the most visible aspect of what the OCBA does for you. The other aspect that you don't see so much of is more behind the scenes. We work to get qualified candidates elected. We work to get qualified people to apply for appointed positions, and we work very hard at that because this city can't function. And I think Tony would agree with me. This city can't function without committees that support this work in advisory capacities and in other functions as well. So that's just part of what the OCBA does for you.
Very good. Yeah. Well said. Thank you, William. Well said. Okay, unless anyone else has anything, last minute announcement, we are adjourned. Thanks for coming.